In the corridors of global power, a whisper has grown into a roar, echoing through the halls of international diplomacy and finance. Headlines now suggest Canada is quietly spearheading a movement that challenges American dominance, a movement that could reshape the global financial landscape. Former President Donald Trump's reported fury underscores the gravity of the situation, highlighting the potential shift in power dynamics that could redefine international relations. This isn't just about currency exchange rates, it's a challenge to the post-war economic order America built, an order that has long been the foundation of global trade and finance. The story begins with subtle maneuvers, hushed agreements in Ottawa, strategic handshakes in Beijing, and murmurs in Europe, all pointing to a coordinated effort to rethink the status quo. For decades, the US dollar has been the world's bedrock of stability, a symbol of economic security and trust. But what if that trust is eroding? What if the very foundation of global finance is shifting beneath our feet? Canada, often seen as America's junior partner, is now near the epicenter of a global financial tremor, a tremor that could signal a new era in international economics. Even America's closest friends are preparing for a world where US dominance is no longer guaranteed, exploring new alliances and strategies. Trump's loud reactions force us to confront a reality. The dollar's supremacy is not a law of nature, but a construct that can be challenged and perhaps even dismantled in the face of changing global tides. To truly grasp the magnitude of this global challenge, we first need to understand the extraordinary power and influence of the US dollar. The greenback isn't just America's currency, it's the lifeblood of the world's financial system, shaping economies and decisions far beyond US borders. Since 1944, when world leaders gathered at Bretton Woods, the dollar has served as the world's primary reserve currency. Central banks across continents hold vast reserves of dollars, using them as a safety net and a tool for stability in times of crisis. Oil, gold, and most global commodities are priced in dollars, making it the backbone of international trade. Whether a country is buying wheat, crude oil, or microchips, chances are the transaction is settled in dollars, linking economies in a vast web of greenback-based commerce. This exorbitant privilege gives the U.S. unmatched economic leverage, allowing it to borrow cheaply, run large deficits, and finance its ambitions with ease. The world's demand for dollars means the U.S. can spend more than it earns, a unique advantage in global finance. The dollar's dominance also gives Washington a potent foreign policy tool, control over the global financial system. With this power, the U.S. can influence international banks, shape global regulations, and set the rules of the financial game. Sanctions can cut countries off from the world economy, reinforcing U.S. influence. When nations fall out of favor, access to the dollar-based system can be swiftly revoked, with devastating economic consequences. Everyday transactions from Brazil to South Korea often settle in dollars, even if neither country uses it domestically. This reliance on the dollar makes it a universal language for business, trusted by buyers and sellers alike. The dollar acts as a trusted intermediary, simplifying global commerce and reducing the risks of currency fluctuations. It's the glue that holds together countless deals, contracts, and investments across borders. But this immense power ultimately rests on trust. Trust in the U.S. economy, its institutions, and its political stability. The world's faith in the dollar is what keeps it at the center of global finance. If that trust falters, due to unpredictable policies, rising debt, or overuse of sanctions, the foundation weakens. Investors and governments may start to look for alternatives, questioning the dollar's reliability. Now, nations are openly debating whether relying on a single currency and a single country is still wise in an increasingly multipolar world. The search for alternatives is gaining momentum. The dollar's throne, once unassailable, is now being tested by shifting alliances, new technologies, and rising economic powers. The world is watching closely, waiting to see what comes next, and whether the age of the greenback will endure or give way to a new era in global finance. The push for alternatives to the US dollar is gaining momentum. For many, it's about sovereignty, escaping the ripple effects of US monetary policy. When the Federal Reserve raises rates, developing nations can suffer as capital flees and debt costs soar. The political weaponization of the dollar through sanctions has made even allies uneasy. China and Russia are building parallel financial systems, promoting their own currencies and accumulating gold. Their goal: insulate themselves from American pressure and reclaim economic control. Even Europe is exploring ways to boost the euro's global role after US sanctions affected European companies. This global unease has created fertile ground for change. Into this environment, Canada's recent actions have landed with profound impact. The world is ready for alternatives. Canada, deeply tied to the US, is quietly diversifying its economic partnerships. New trade agreements, like the CPTPP, allow business in local currencies, bypassing the dollar. Canada has expanded bilateral currency swap lines, including with China, and established a UN trading hub in North America. These moves, though subtle, lay the groundwork for a non-dollar-centric trade system. Canadian officials emphasize trade diversification, signaling awareness of the risks of over-reliance on the US. By seeking new markets and financial arrangements, Canada is building resilience for a future where the US may not be as reliable. This isn't economic war, it's prudent hedging. Canada's quiet rebellion is a significant evolution in its policy, preparing for a world where the dollar's dominance is no longer absolute. It's this preparation that has drawn Trump's ire. Canada is not alone in seeking financial autonomy. China and Russia have made de-dollarization central to their strategy, reducing dollar reserves and settling trade in their own currencies. India is promoting the rupee in international trade, while Brazil and Argentina are exploring a common currency. Even oil-rich Middle Eastern nations like Saudi Arabia are considering pricing oil in yuan. This isn't a formal alliance but a convergence of interests. Rivals, emerging economies, and some US allies all moving away from the dollar. The BRICS nations are discussing a new reserve currency, and smaller countries are diversifying reserves. Each new agreement and trade deal in local currencies adds to the momentum. Canada's actions are now part of a global symphony of change. The world is moving together toward a multipolar financial system. America's response is a mix of bravado and concern, embodied by Trump's public fury. He frames Canada's moves as betrayal, rallying his base to defend American dominance. But behind the scenes, US officials recognize the risks of de-dollarization. They promote the strengths of US markets and warn of the instability of alternatives like the yuan. The overuse of sanctions is debated. Each use pushes others to seek alternatives. Some strategists urge restraint, fearing the loss of the dollar's power. Trump's outrage and Washington's quiet concern both acknowledge the dollar's position is no longer guaranteed. The slow erosion of its dominance is a real national security concern. America is paying close attention, knowing the stakes are high. These trends, Canada's push for diversification, the mounting economic challenges faced by China and Russia, and a growing sense of global discontent, are all converging to create a far more complex and unpredictable financial future than we've seen before. The world is no longer content with the status quo, and the established order is being questioned from multiple directions. The US dollar won't collapse overnight. There simply isn't another currency ready or able to take its place on the world stage just yet. Its dominance is deeply rooted in global trade, finance, and trust. But the dollar's absolute authority is slowly waning, opening the door for the rise of regional currency blocs, where the dollar dominates the Americas, the euro holds sway in Europe, and the yuan gains traction across Asia. This shift is gradual but unmistakable. As a result, global trade will become more intricate and fragmented, with higher risks and more volatility, but also with less dependency on any single nation's currency. Businesses and governments alike will need to adapt to this new reality. For the United States, even a partial decline in the dollar's dominance means higher borrowing costs, more economic uncertainty, and a reduced ability to use financial sanctions as a tool of foreign policy. American influence will have to shift from economic coercion to more traditional forms of diplomacy and negotiation, as the world becomes less willing to accept unilateral decisions. The Canadian-led revolt, amplified by the fury and rhetoric of figures like Donald Trump, is just one symbol of a much larger global transformation that is underway. This is not a sudden revolution, but rather a steady, ongoing evolution away from total reliance on the dollar, a process that will reshape the global financial landscape over the coming years. The era of unquestioned dollar supremacy is drawing to a close, and the implications will be felt in every corner of the world. The world, and America, must prepare for what comes next, as a new chapter in global finance begins to unfold before our eyes.